So here I am, a humble palace maid, just trying not to get crushed by palace life, and somehow I ended up as the emperor's favorite concubine's secret weapon. Now I brush hair, boss around jealous maids, and accidentally cause chaos. Welcome to my accidental rise in the most dramatic palace ever. I'm a third-rank hairdressing maid in the Qingxi Palace. My favorite part of each day is dressing up the noble consort to make her look gorgeous. What's that? His Majesty spent the day with a dancer from Jiangnan? Then let's go with a light and fresh summer outfit. What's that? His Majesty's latest fancy is exotic styles? Alright, time for a belly-bearing flying Duanhuang style ensemble. I relied on my skills to become the head steward of the inner palace. That lasted until I turned 25 and needed to leave the palace for a visit home. The usually indifferent noble consort gritted her teeth. I won't allow you to go. The composed and polite empress smiled gently. The palace rules are outdated. It's about time for change. But all I wanted was to go home and visit my family.
1.
I'm a fashion blogger. After dying suddenly from overwork, I transmigrated to the 13th year of the Zhao reign in the Liang dynasty. And I became an honorable palace hairdressing maid. The moment I arrived, the palace chief eunuch, Liang Qiushi, was about to feed me. He grinned wickedly, holding a bright red Mandarin duck belly band in his hands. Yuan'er, just let eunuch Liang show you some care, he said. I looked at Liang Qiushi's yellowed teeth and nearly fainted. But I couldn't faint. If a princess faints, a prince who might turn into a frog could be nearby. If a palace maid faints, well, she'd only end up at the mercy of a hulking eunuch. And I had to escape. Liang Qiushi hadn't brought any assistance to avoid gossip, so I shoved him hard and ran toward the far side of the rockery. But I hadn't gone far. I crashed straight into a woman's arms. Hearing a clear, pained ouch made my heart sink. Before my brain could react, I was already kneeling. I mimicked the characters from palace dramas and begged, "Your Highness, please forgive me. Your Highness, please forgive me." No thanks. This person had probably transmigrated in the morning and had their ashes scattered by the afternoon. The woman I collided with steadied herself and glanced at me. Feeding in the palace is strictly forbidden. Such filthy behavior, and it happens right in front of me? Send someone, drag him out, and give him 10 lashes.
2.
I shivered. Outside, Liang Qiushi's screams as he was beaten pierced the air. Meanwhile, I, the unfortunate cannon fodder, knelt respectfully in the inner hall. In front of me sat the noble consort, the second most powerful person in the entire palace. Her eyebrows arched like green feathers, her beauty elegant and graceful. Exactly what I expected a favored consort to look like. She sipped her tea lightly. On her wrist, beneath sheer clouds of silk, jingled red jade bracelets and gold chains. Yuan'er, you belong to my palace. Think honestly, have I ever withheld anything from you all these years? I stared dumbly at her wrist. The noble consort cleared her throat softly. I snapped out of it and bowed my head. No, Your Highness. An old maid standing nearby added her commentary. The bold noble consort is never harsh. You were never mistreated, yet you got mixed up with a eunuch. If this spreads, won't it embarrass Your Highness? The noble consort lowered her eyes, lazily. The emperor doesn't come to my hall often, so you've grown lazy. Seems today, I must be strict. Send her out. Your Highness, I blurted. The noble consort froze, clearly not expecting my audacity to interrupt her. She was about to get angry, but one sentence from me stopped her in her tracks. Red jade with gold doesn't look good. Why not try tourmaline? It also attracts love luck. 3. Are you serious? The noble consort frowned and scrutinized me carefully. I immediately regretted speaking. In dramas, the more energetic the minor character, the sooner they die. Especially now, I looked just like a sycophantic lackey trying to win the consort's favor. But since I had spoken, I couldn't back down. I edged closer to the noble consort and pointed at the jumble of accessories on her wrist. Your Highness, look at your hands, they're perfect for rouge application. Fair, smooth, and refined. beyond compare. Such hands are top quality. Red jade or gold alone is fine, but they shouldn't be mixed. If you want layered bracelets, tourmaline would be better. Tourmaline? The noble consort frowned. My slow brain suddenly caught up. Your Highness, this stone is rare, we might need to search carefully. Very well. Since you have connections, go find me a few pieces. The noble consort gave a casual command. The maid beside her glared, jealous of my favor, but I couldn't smile. Tourmaline, in modern times I could just order it online. But in ancient times, where on earth would I find it? Yet when a noble gives an order, even a lowly maid must solve the problem. I cursed under my breath, but still smiled as I retreated. Back in the palace, maid quarters, I froze. This dangerous building in front of me, could anyone really live here? Not only could they, but over a dozen people did. The main hall of Qingxi Palace gleamed with gold and splendor. The noble consort loved luxury and indulgence. But the southeast servant quarters were tiny, cramped, and drafty, like a makeshift shack. Seeing me stunned, the old maid impatiently shoved me. What are you staring at? Don't think a few words from the consort make you special. A servant is a servant. Better stay grounded. I was shoved hard and stumbled into the servant room. All the palace maids looked at me. Inside, the room was like a dormitory with a big common sleeping area and 10 or so bedding mats, each with clear boundaries. My face turned green. In school, the largest dorm was 8 people. This tiny room housed over a dozen? When I visited the Forbidden City before, I laughed off the guides' talk about maid and eunuch quarters. Now, with a whip waiting outside, I understood the pain. I trembled under the deadpan gazes of the other maids, walked stiffly to my bed, and lay down. The bed boards were hard. In humid weather, the bedding was damp. I wanted to cry. Overnight, my memory of a comfortable mattress, bed, air conditioning, and heating vanished. All that remained was this tiny drafty room and cold boards. I swore to myself, I would cling to the noble consort's golden favor. I will get promoted. 4. The next morning, I woke up bright and early. The palace maid's meals were simple: porridge, steamed buns, and enough to fill you up. If you wanted anything better, forget it. Even so, a bunch of palace maids and eunuchs devoured the food with slurps and satisfied sighs. A round-faced little maid noticed me staring and smiled shyly. There were floods at home. Famine, it's a miracle we can eat our fill now. I forced myself to eat the dry bun with a pale expression. The buns came from the imperial kitchen, steamed at dawn, and distributed cold to each palace. In this palace, everything was decided by the emperor's favor. Only favored consorts could have their own small kitchens to eat separately. The imperial kitchen, however, was hereditary, passed down through relatives, and over the years had become increasingly careless. The emperor didn't dare to complain. Being skimped on was normal. Consorts out of favor had to grit their teeth and endure it. My noble consort came from a military family. Her father guarded the borders and held a high official post. Even though she wasn't in favor, she still had the rank of noble consort. Rank gave prestige, but treatment remained average. His Majesty was diligent in governance and rarely visited the harem. When he did, other femme fatale distracted him. The old maid gritted her teeth, complaining. That new bamboo beauty must have learned some low-class trick somewhere. She sang a tune and lured him away, despite your highness preparing a whole feast. And beautiful consortly, she stationed herself along the emperor's path into our palace, performing a seductive dance. His Majesty intended to visit us, but she tricked him away. And Consort Zhang, she's clever. She even stole a roll of fragrant yun silk from your highness to make a dress. But it's wasted effort. The emperor doesn't care for such flashy, colorful clothing. Old maid Zhang ranted on, recounting all the glorious achievements of the other consorts. I slurped my bland porridge, listening as Zhang encouraged us to help our noble consort gain favor. I couldn't help but smirk. She made the emperor sound like a paragon of virtue, but really, he was still just a lecher. A yes that I know how to handle. 5. In my past life, I was a fashion blogger. not styling myself, but helping others get dressed. I wasn't particularly attractive, and my figure was mediocre, but I was always surrounded by beautiful women. The problem? They didn't know how to dress. Some husbands preferred a virtuous and domestic wife, so they deliberately went plain and drab. Some were obsessed with academia and didn't care about looks, only to have a dodgy snatch their achievements. And the worst were the ones who got mocked during blind dates as sweeping maids from the last century. I never understood it. Long legs, willow-like waist, swan neck, flawless skin. Wasn't that far more respectable than men with acne, smoke-stained hands, and foul odors? So when I first started filming videos, I dragged these beauties along for makeover videos. The results were amazing. That's how I became a top influencer, but late nights writing scripts killed me. Now, amidst the eunuchs and maids of the palace, dark circles still shadowed my face. If I had known I'd transmigrate to the ancient world on the night of the 7-star conjunction, I would have gone to bed at 10. But regrets change nothing now. In this world where human life is as cheap as grass, my only wish is to survive decently. Last night, the girl in the next bed snored, and I didn't sleep a wink. Unable to sleep, I decided to think about survival strategies. After some calculation, there was only one path: return to my old profession. Extreme makeover, forbidden city consorts. I refused to believe that if I could transform so many beauties before, I couldn't transform a noble consort here. If the noble consort gained favor, all of us palace maids would benefit. If she was happy, wouldn't my treatment improve as well? Suddenly, my ambition ignited. If it weren't still dark, I'd have gone to fetch that tourmaline for her already. Finally, dawn arrived, and old maid Zhang lectured us small maids endlessly. I listened nervously until she left. Just as I was about to sneak out for the stone, another maid called to me. Yuan'er, today is your turn to sweep the courtyard. I'm a hairdressing maid. When did sweeping the courtyard become my job? I opened my mouth to protest, but froze when I saw the maid's face, 3 parts similar to old maid Zhang's.
Fine. Sweeping it is.
It wouldn't take long anyway. Don't underestimate palace servants. Anyone who rises to a decent position here is smart. Old maid Zhang was a family-born maid, brought in by the noble consort herself, far more precious than us palace-assigned girls. Even her daughter, Jinji, was elevated by association. I had to endure. I must endure. But I underestimated the workload of a palace maid. In feudal times, you weren't just a servant. You were both an ox and a horse, a chicken and a duck. One moment you worked like a steady ox, the next you were being chased around like frantic poultry. Sweeping meant I had to sweep the floor and dust with a feather duster. Even moss in the cracks of the floor had to be scraped out. While I knelt scraping moss, Jinji strutted past, swishing her waist and snorting haughtily. Clean it properly, don't slack off. I didn't argue, just glumly kept cleaning. She was barely 17 or 18. Why so high and mighty? Poor ox, poor horse, what's the point? Finally, when she left, I finished scraping the moss and straightened up. Out of the corner of my eye, something glimmered in a crack in the floor. Did I see that right? Something shiny was in the floor crack. Squinting, I bent down for a closer look. It practically fell into my hands. I was overjoyed. A tourmaline stone had lodged itself in the crack. The moss had grown thick, and no one had cleaned here for ages. Sunlight hit it just right, making it glitter. A truly rare treasure. I carefully pried the tourmaline free, cradled it in my hand, and blew off the dust. My life was saved. 6. The noble consort eyed the little stone on her wrist suspiciously. So this little thing is called tourmaline? Why does it look like the court beads a minister wears? I put on an apologetic smile. Yes, Your Highness. This is a rare treasure.
Your maid only obtained it by chance.
Very well. She finally indulged me, nodding with satisfaction. Looking at it now, it does seem prettier than red jade with gold. Her mood was good, and she even favored me. Today, you'll do my hair. Nearby, Jinji, the maid originally assigned to style the noble consort's hair, snapped her wooden comb in frustration. Her eyes glared at me, as if shooting venom. I shrank my neck nervously. The workplace is harsh. If the boss gave an order, I couldn't just refuse. After the noble consort issued her command, Jinji reluctantly left, leaving only a few maids behind in the hall. Today, I was the main stylist. I stood carefully by the noble consort's side, gazing at the beauty reflected in the bronze mirror. A bold plan began to form in my mind. The noble consort adjusted her hair, looking slightly uncomfortable. I've never worn so few ornaments before. On her cloud-like hair, there were only a few dangling hairpins and a single peony. For a noble consort once adorned in full crowns and jewels, this felt strange. Your Highness, your features are exquisite, like a peony that could overthrow a kingdom. While gold and silver suits you, too many ornaments ruin the effect. A high bun with a violet peony is far superior, truly first class among flowers. First class among flowers? She laughed at my comment. Today, she was going to attend the monthly moon gathering to pay respects to the empress. The current empress was a later wife, childless and easygoing, so she didn't insist that other consorts pay daily respects. But the monthly greeting was a strict ancestral rule. With her new hairstyle, the noble consort strode out proudly. I followed behind, craning my neck, hoping for dramatic reactions from the other consorts. It would make me feel better. After seeing her off, I returned to my ordinary life as a sweeping and cleaning maid. Lunch was bland, just an extra dish of spinach with tofu. The noble consort had paid out of her own funds to supplement our meal. Even as a third-rank maid, I could now eat the same food as the higher-ranked maids serving closely. In other palaces, an unfavored young lady would have had only boiled vegetable scraps left over from cleaning pots. Used to modern delicacies, even spinach and tofu tasted bitter to me. I stood in stark contrast to the other maids happily devouring their food. Jinji sneered sarcastically. Some think climbing high brings success. They haven't seen anything yet. As a first-rank maid, she naturally got better meals, silver thread buns and fresh bamboo shoot porridge at dawn, white rice with 4 hot dishes at noon, plus a dish of shredded chicken noodles. Compared to us lowly maids, her life was glorious. I glanced at her enviously. I had no energy to argue. I was too hungry. Ordinary maids had only 2 meals a day. I had no hidden buns, so tonight I'd go hungry. The noble consort didn't return until late afternoon. She entered in high spirits, her face radiant with a smile. The moment I saw her, I knew I was safe. Sure enough, she announced. Today, the entire palace shall be served 1 dish of cherry pork. The maids and eunuchs were overjoyed. In a low-productivity era, an extra dish was a blessing. Many relied on it to add a bit of fat for the winter. Her personal eunuch, Zhou Dafu, nodded and kowtowed as he asked, "Your Highness, what good fortune has befallen us for you to be so generous today?" The noble consort, in a good mood, explained, "The princess has entered the palace today. Among so many, she praised only me. Even virtuous consort must be jealous." Aside from the empress, the palace had consorts from all 4 quarters. Besides the noble consort, there was virtuous consort. Thanks to the title, virtuous, she always overshadowed the noble consort. Today, the noble consort finally got her moment of triumph. No wonder she treated the entire palace to cherry pork. She treated me with particular kindness. "You'll do my hair again tomorrow." I nodded timidly. "Yes, Your Highness." The other maids looked at me with envy. They understood that being near me meant sharing in some of the noble consort's favor. If I worked well, promotions wouldn't be a problem. I let out a long breath. My head and life were safe, and the path to promotion was opening. I only had to survive carefully. Of all the maids, only one looked displeased, Jinji.
7.
Night fell. I lay down, trying to endure my hunger, when I noticed Jinji sneaking out. She shouldn't have been living here. She'd been demoted to the common dormitory after being mocked for styling the noble consort's hair a few days ago. But anyone with eyes could see that, given old maid Zhang's influence, Jinji's return to the main hall was only a matter of time. Sure enough, while the other maids lay down, Jinji went off to curry favor.
We weren't surprised.
But tonight, she stayed out too long. For some reason, a bad premonition gnawed at me. Just then, old maid Zhang entered. Yuan'er, the noble consort, wants you. My right eyelid twitched 3 times. I shot up, quickly dressed, and tried to read her expression. Madam, what hairstyle does your highness want this time? Hairstyle? Old maid Zhang's presence alone was terrifying. She laughed coldly twice. I shivered. Following her, I felt like a prisoner being led into the main hall. Zhou Dafu gestured for me to go ahead. I knelt and paid my respects. Yuan'er seeks an audience with your highness. The sound of porcelain shattering echoed inside. Zhou Dafu said, the noble consort allows you in. Of course. Someone was trying to set me up. As I stepped inside, something flew straight at my face. I focused, and it was the tourmaline I had painstakingly found in the daylight. I didn't dare dodge and braced for impact. The noble consort had unpinned her hair, sitting in simple attire before the bronze mirror. Her beauty couldn't hide her anger. Behind her, Jinji wore a smug smile. The noble consort demanded sharply, "Where did you get this bead?" I steeled myself and replied, "Your Highness, your maid found it." "Humph, found it indeed. Do you know what crime you've committed? You're only fit to wear a bead from the dirt." My head buzzed. And Jinji beside me now wore a look of pure mockery. So that day, she hadn't gone far. She'd seen everything clearly. My face went deathly pale. I wanted to explain, but the noble consort prized her dignity above all. With this blown, my life was hanging by a thread. Sure enough, she flung the tourmaline out. "Take your mud-stained bead and get out of the palace." In the dead of night, with the palace locked tight, where could I go? But when the master gave an order, I could only bow and retreat slowly. Jinji promptly shut the door behind me. As I grimaced, unsure of what to do, old maid Zhang's trembling voice came from the doorway. "Your Highness, His Majesty is at Qingxi Palace." We all turned toward the small tourmaline on the floor. A ridiculous thought flashed through my mind. No way could it really attract attention? The noble consort jumped up, excitement flashing across her face. "The Emperor hasn't visited Qingxi Palace in so long. Quick, help me prepare my hair." The sparrow-like maid beside Jinji reacted quickly, draping garments over the noble consort. Jinji's face turned pale. Had she realized something? She instinctively glanced at the noble consort. The noble consort shot her a glare, then beckoned me. "Yuan'er, what are you standing there for? Do my hair." I understood immediately. She had her eyes on me again. Forget pride. I rushed forward like a sycophant. "Your Highness, shall we do a fashionable hairstyle?" She nodded arrogantly. "Of course. The Emperor hasn't seen me in so long. Make sure it's perfect."
8.
His Majesty's imperial carriage entered Qingxi Palace. I hurriedly styled the noble consort's hair into a falling horse bun. The jade and mother-of-pearl long hairpins from her makeup box, which hadn't been touched since being stored, I carefully placed into the bun. Looking back in the mirror, the noble consort's cloud-like hair and floral beauty were complemented by the long dangling pins, giving her a charming, girlish elegance. The Emperor entered the hall, frowning as usual, until he saw the noble consort laughing softly, radiant and full of life. Her youthful demeanor and playful style softened the Emperor's features. "Wanmei, I could have sworn I was seeing you at 18. Indeed. The Emperor and the noble consort had once shared the innocent sweetness of childhood, playing around bedsides and chasing each other like young lovers. But years of hatred and distance had driven them apart. Their feelings no longer matched. Now, with her new hairstyle, the noble consort brought back a piece of that past. Seeing the Emperor smiling and holding her hand, while the noble consort blushed in delight, the rest of us quietly withdrew. The moon shone bright in the dark night. Tonight was the 15th day, a symbol of reunion. By custom, the Emperor would usually visit the Empress's palace. Yet today, he stopped at Qingxi Palace. Old maid Zhang exhaled slowly. Yuan'er, you did very well today. Even her sharp features bore a trace of fatigue. In the future, always help your highness this way. I obediently nodded and headed toward the dressing room. Of course I would help the noble consort. She was now my direct superior, my provider of food and clothing. Just as a hidden dragon enters the deep, even the proudest tiger must lie low in the palace. Helping the noble consort was also helping myself.
9.
A night of spring favor. The next day, when the noble consort emerged from her chamber, her face glowed with joy. With a wave of her jade-like hand, "Today, the entire palace shall receive half a month's salary." The eunuchs and maids were all delighted. When the master was favored, the servants shared in the benefits. Yesterday's cherry pork dish was served to everyone. I ate it almost to tears. Though not usually fond of meat, after a day and a half without it, I had truly missed it. After the meal, Jin Ji came reluctantly to find me. "The noble consort wants you." Old maid Zhang shot her a warning glance from behind and whispered to me, "Do your work well. Don't worry, your highness." Full and content, I happily agreed. Zhou Dafu led me into the main hall. As we walked, I couldn't help but notice the flower on his hat. I asked, "Eunuch Zhou, do you have a brother named Zhou Lufu?" Only then did I realize I might have said something wrong. My apologies if I offended. How did you know? Zhou Dafu was no longer young. The noble consort disliked unattractive people, so he had naturally kept a refined appearance, often pinning a small flower on his hat. He gave a half smile, half grimace. "Our family has 6 brothers. The youngest is indeed called Lufu." "Oh, so you must be the eldest?" Immediately, I wanted to smack myself. My mouth. "Why do you never behave?" Zhou Dafu looked speechless but didn't respond, leading me into the main hall. The noble consort was arranging flowers. Narcissus of varying heights complemented her crimson attire beautifully. She was in a cheerful mood. Seeing me, she gestured for me to rise. "Yuan'er, do you have any methods for attracting the emperor? Tell me at once." Oh no, she had fallen for my accidental mystical charm trick. But there was no way I would confess honestly. A great philosopher once said the only truth in the world is materialism. If a method for attracting love didn't work every time, the noble consort would soon be disappointed, and then I'd be in trouble. Nihilism would not do. Only methods under my own control were true. I leaned in flattery. "Your Highness, one should not speak of strange forces. The method itself is secondary. What matters is your Highness's face. It is like a peach blossom, attracting the emperor naturally. Your beauty is unmatched. Only your careful attire has allowed others to take advantage. If you dress elegantly every day, how could the emperor resist coming to Qingxi Palace?" My sycophantic words made the noble consort burst into laughter. "You sly thing." I held her silky black hair and nodded earnestly. "Today, I will style your Highness's hair into a full moon bun." Luckily, I had experience doing makeup and hair for Hanfu models and had studied hairstyles from different dynasties. Styling the noble consort differently each time was now second nature. Soon, the full moon bun was complete. She wanted to wear her usual jeweled headpiece. I interjected, "That one is always worn. Let's let the other consorts see some of your other jewelry." She agreed, retaining her poise. I carefully selected a velvet flower from the box and secured it in her hair. The noble consort seemed slightly unaccustomed. "So plain?" I nodded solemnly. "Plainness highlights your Highness's beauty, like fresh lotus after the rain." She was satisfied. After preparing her attire, she strode out confidently. Today, she was visiting the Empress Dowager. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her lead Zhou Dafu away. At times like this, I felt like a little pet, unable to go out or wander, just waiting for the master to return from the hunt. "Noble consort, may your hunt today go smoothly." The servants were tired of plain vegetables.
10.
The noble consort returned, beaming with pride. My mistress was not one to hide her emotions. Everything she felt was written plainly on her face. She flaunted to me. The Empress Dowager praised me alone today. Humph, I thought. All the fuss those foolish women made was useless. The Empress Dowager is ill. She doesn't like showiness. I understood immediately. The mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law problem, eternal and unsolvable. Even the Empress Dowager disliked seeing her son's women adorned in gold and jewels, especially while she was unwell. Those women only knew how to dress up and not how to care for her. It was infuriating. No wonder the usually critical Empress Dowager had become kind. To her, the noble consort wearing only velvet flowers was the epitome of modesty. I instantly grasped the essence of the mother-in-law/daughter-in-law dynamic. The noble consort continued boasting about her wisdom. I immediately knew those women had ill intentions. They thought dressing up would help them see the emperor. But today the emperor didn't come. Humph. With just one word from the Empress Dowager, he wouldn't even glance at them now. Indeed, the emperor actually came to dine tonight. I had to refresh my impression of the noble consort as dumb but rich. The women of the harem certainly did not live in vain. Though not the sharpest, the noble consort's understanding of palace rules was keen. The emperor had only come for a meal. Yet even this made the noble consort eat several bowls of rice with delight. Afterward, she burped. The emperor hasn't visited Qingxi Palace in so long. I've finally made it through, she sighed happily. I patted her back, flattering her. Noble consort, you are the crown jewel of the palace. Even if all the 8 banners of Manchu and Mongol were gathered, they couldn't compare to your majestic poise. The noble consort laughed. What banners? What majesty? Oops, my flattery misfired. I had instinctively quoted a well-known line. But the Qing had not yet entered, and the Manchus were still playing in some remote corner of the greater Xing'an Mountains. Luckily, the noble consort was illiterate. She had also drunk a bit more wine today, slightly tipsy. In front of me, she displayed a hint of her girlish charm. His Majesty, if not for that matter, he would surely love me. I pricked up my ears, eager for secrets, but old maid Zhang suddenly intervened, taking the noble consort gently aside. Your Highness, you're drunk. She then whispered to me. You've worked hard today. Go rest now. Well, I had no choice but to leave. Little did I know, when I returned to the dressing room, a major event awaited me. 11. Jean Ji and a few other maids had set a trap for me. Under the flickering lantern light, their faces appeared blurred and cold. These familiar faces, with whom I had shared meals, now seemed frighteningly strange. Jean Ji sneered. You're not Yuan'er at all. The certainty in her voice made my heart skip a beat. Yuan'er is timid and clumsy. How could she stick around the noble consort every day? The round-faced maid added. Yuan'er has been saving up to leave the palace at 25. How could she still cling to the noble consort daily? Their jealous faces formed a tight line, shadowed under the lanterns. I suddenly laughed. Yes, I'm not Yuan'er. The lantern light flickered as I leaned toward them. My expression twisted. I am the palace demon possessing her body, here to take your lives. The maids screamed and scattered, their faces drained of color, utterly lacking the arrogance they had shown before. I smiled with satisfaction. If you're not convinced, fight me for it. I was hiding my talents before and never sought to compete with you. But after meeting Liang Qiushi and being pressured by him, I realized the noble consort is the most important. Consider me her loyal flunky, I serve her, and that's final. Jean Ji's face turned pale, though she tried to seem fierce. You think a few hairdos make you special? You're just lucky this time. Wait for me. Having spoken, she stormed off, probably to seek refuge with her mother, old maid Zhang. I shook my head, unbothered. But thinking of their words, a small doubt lingered. Yuan'er, what kind of person is she? I reached under my bedding and felt for a few familiar hard objects. Silver coins. Yuan'er had secretly saved them, intending to return home at 25. I had no intention of taking over her life. But according to the 7 stars conjunction rule, she should now have arrived in the modern world. I don't understand astronomy, nor do I know when the next 7 stars conjunction will be. But perhaps I should leave the palace for a while and help Yuan'er return home. After all, I occupy her body. I owe her filial duty.
12.
Recently, Qingxi Palace had been filled with joy. The noble consort had one favor. Her radiance and health were even better. The imperial kitchen no longer delivered mediocre dishes. Flowing plates of exquisite food were sent in, and maids from other palaces came to inquire. Of course, they learned nothing. The noble consort summoned me. Yuan'er, you've done great work this time. From now on, you will follow me and attend to me. Following behind the noble consort is the duty of a second-rank maid. Moreover, with this promotion, my monthly stipend would also rise. I eagerly agreed. Second-rank maids could move between palaces. Whenever the noble consort attended an event, I could accompany her. And the dishes at midday were no longer plain spinach tofu. I might even get some leftovers. Leftovers may sound unpleasant, but the noble consort, impatient for the kitchen's full service, would pick her favorite dishes first. So-called leftovers were simply dishes she hadn't touched. I had completely adapted to palace life. I could accept anything now. Being promoted to second-rank maid made me quite happy. Especially when moving to the dormitory on the southwest side, the other maids' faces were sour. Jinji was no longer much higher than me. At best, she was my equal. She was patient enough not to complain. I pulled a face at her while carrying my bedding. See you later. The new quarters were still cramped, but a luxury suite compared to the old dorm. For per room, with 3 other second-rank maids. They had experience attending the noble consort and understood my current favor, so they did not make things difficult. One, called Luo Xiao, was especially kind. She explained much about palace life. When the noble consort goes out, she brings 2 second-rank maids and 1 old maid. Old maid Zhang, always favored, is her companion, so she goes every time. The other 2 second-rank maids follow the schedule unless specifically chosen by the noble consort. I realized I had filled Jinji's previous spot. No wonder she had glared at me like a demon earlier. Now that everyone naturally lived here, there was no reason for me to yield. I accepted the 4-person room comfortably. Luo Xiao added with a smile. Originally, there should have been 2 first-rank maids, but Qingxi Palace had incidents in the past. Now only old maid Zhang remains. The remaining 4 cannot be promoted further. I thought on these tidbits. Luo Xiao pinched me lightly. Enough, that's for later.
Don't think about it now.
The noble consort is going to enjoy the flowers, go get ready. I sincerely thanked her and slipped her a few silver coins. She refused at first but took them. Jinji would surely still cause trouble, so I needed someone reliable to keep an eye out. Luo Xiao, diplomatic and clever, was perfect. Being friendly with her could do no harm. 13. The spring day was bright and beautiful. The noble consort glanced at the sky and, on a whim, decided to go enjoy the flowers. I styled her hair in a fresh new look and paired it with a spring outfit full of vibrant green. Truly, my mistress was stunning. The noble consort seemed pleased as well, lingering before the mirror to admire herself. Then she led me and Luo Xiao out. In the imperial garden, flowers bloomed in full splendor. I had already seen plenty of large parks in the modern world, where attractions were far grander than the small imperial garden. So, honestly, I wasn't very excited. But the noble consort gazed seriously, studying even the folds on each petal. After all, in a material-scarce era, women's vision was focused on every scene, flower, and object. Even looking at the sky meant only glimpses through the squared-off palace walls. I watched the noble consort with a touch of pity. In our preoccupation, we didn't notice another group hidden behind the willows and blossoms, except Luo Xiao, who had sharp eyes, whispered early, "Your Highness, the Empress is ahead." When paths cross, rank prevails. No matter how unwilling, the noble consort had to bow. As for us lowly attendants, 3 kneelings and 9 kowtows would have been proper. But the Empress was kind, waving us to rise. I could sense that the aura between the noble consort and the Empress was off. Women have auras too. Usually, women who get along well, almost like sisters, become even closer over time. But the aura between the empress and the noble consort was strange. Sure enough, after a few steps, the noble consort wanted to leave. The empress, however, remained composed. The spring day is beautiful. Will the noble consort not stay a while longer? The noble consort grit her teeth. I do not have the thick skin some people have to flaunt themselves in front of others. The empress smiled gently. Wanmei, are you speaking of me? Not at all. The noble consort clutched her handkerchief, teeth clenched. I meant the palace, maid Yuan'er.
Huh.
I was quietly enjoying the flowers when, unexpectedly, I was named, almost breaking my composure. Mistress, you're using me as a shield? The noble consort continued. Yuan'er is disobedient. Last time, she almost fell victim to a scoundrel. I warned her to be careful, but she didn't listen. What could I do? It's my own mistress. I would just obey. I stayed silent and meek. The empress laughed. I've heard His Majesty has been visiting your palace often lately. Seeing it today, it's truly refreshing and refined. The noble consort merely bit her lip in silence. She led us away, fuming. That night, Luo Xiao quietly confided. The noble consort and the empress used to be handkerchief friends.
Ah.
I was astonished. These two seemed so sharp and pointed toward each other. It didn't seem like a close friendship. Luo Xiao whispered. The noble consort excels in writing and archery. The empress excels in poetry and prose. One is martial, one literary. They were called the twin pillars of the capital. Only after the empress's elder sister gave birth to the crown prince, she passed away. The emperor feared the concubine might mistreat the prince, and the late empress's family, the Xie clan, worried about losing status, so she was brought into the palace. I gasped, covering my mouth. Then her brother married his sister-in-law?
Exactly.
The empress was once betrothed to the noble consort's elder brother. Luo Xiao, a true gossip, explained every detail. I frowned. And the noble consort entering the palace later.
Exactly.
There are no real sisters in the palace. Even the closest relationships fade after entering. But the noble consort and empress have a separate reason for their feud. What reason could that be? I wanted to ask more, but Luo Xiao refused to continue. The main hall of Qingxi Palace was bright with candlelight all night. 2 other maids were on night duty. I supposed it would be a sleepless night.
14.
After that day, the palace returned to its usual calm. Days passed normally, flowers bloomed and withered. Young faces either grew old or faded in their prime, witnessed only by the tall palace walls and the yellow-glazed tiles. His Majesty rarely came to Qingxi Palace. It was not that the noble consort had fallen out of favor. This was the standard treatment for the entire harem. The previous emperor had been restless. His Majesty now worked day and night, unable to attend to the harem immediately. When he did not come, the noble consort no longer felt like dressing up. Sometimes, she would sigh quietly while looking at us young girls. Other maids kept their noses in their own affairs, but I was curious. Your Highness, why sigh? The noble consort reclined on the beauty couch, her delicate fingers picking up a grape. I was thinking life in the palace is lonely. If one had a child by her side, it would be good. I had heard from Luo Xiao about the noble consort's child. It was a little princess who died just 2 weeks after birth. The noble consort grieved for a time, but since it was not a prince, it was bearable. Still, that childbirth damaged her foundation. She could not have children afterward. At that moment, I felt clumsy and tongue-tied for the first time. Finally, old maid Zhang spoke. If the noble consort wishes to raise a child, she can adopt one, but no child compares to our little princess. The noble consort's eyes darkened briefly. Yes, my Guanyin servant was so lovely, unmatched by any child in the world, but alas, we maids dared not speak while she mourned. She managed to console herself. Enough. It wasn't a prince. My sorrow must have limits. She casually named someone. Sungya, go to the garden and bring back a cat. Recently, envoys from many nations had arrived, bringing tributes, including imperial cats. Sungya nodded gently and left. Outside, she clutched her stomach, pale. Good Yuan'er, I beg you, please do this for me. I instinctively wanted to ask Luo Xiao, but she had been called away by old maid Zhang. Reluctantly, I looked at Sungya. What's wrong, Sister Sungya? By seniority, I had to call her sister. My stomach, it hurts badly. The noble consort's matters cannot wait. You're more careful. Please go in my stead. I carefully assessed her face. She truly looked in pain, pale, sweat on her forehead. All right, Sister Sungya. Rest well. I took the order token and headed to the garden. Aside from the first time I crossed over, this was my first long walk. Qingxi Palace was near the Imperial Garden. Last time, I barely walked. I tiptoed carefully through the palace, surrounded by silent maids and eunuchs. I glimpsed the palace's pavilions and towers. They resembled modern structures in some ways, but compared with brand-new city buildings or commercial streets strung with lights, they had an antique charm. Time had polished these structures into a unique beauty. I regretted knowing nothing about architecture. If experts from later centuries saw these intact buildings, they would be ecstatic. As an amateur, I could only admire their grandeur without understanding the intricate details. Eventually, I arrived at the garden. It was a palace garden cultivating rare flowers and plants, including tribute items from abroad and locally. I found the steward eunuch and explained my purpose. He smiled apologetically. Noble consort wants a tanuki cat? Such a small matter. Why trouble the young lady? We could simply send one to Qingxi Palace. I shook my head. The noble consort herself requested it. She surely wants to choose carefully. Very well. These are the newly received tanuki cats. Follow me. The garden was spacious. At the back was a large cage full of cats. They had not seen people for a while, and now mewed as I approached. The eunuch said cheerfully, "The cats are all here. Please choose one, young lady." I looked at the variety before me, biting my lip. How could I choose? Picking the beautiful one might leave the gentle one disappointed. Picking the gentle one might leave the outgoing one disappointed. Facing all those moist, imploring eyes, I simply closed my own and pointed randomly. The one in the back, the laziest one. The eunuch hesitated. Young lady, the others are good. But that one is fierce, might hurt the noble consort. I looked at the long-haired lion cat, sprawled lazily, and frowned. Fierce, lazy? Just then, the cat stood, shook its fur, and sauntered toward me with a graceful stride. The other cats leapt aside, as if electrocuted. The lion cat squatted before me and meowed once. Not fierce at all. I smiled. This one. Beautiful, gentle, and proactive. Thus, carrying the cat and under the steward eunuch's uneasy gaze, I left the garden. The cat behaved perfectly in my arms. No cage needed. I was pleased. This cat was not fierce at all. The way in had been easy, but the way back was a winding corridor. I got confused and took wrong turns several times. Finally, my mind cleared, and I remembered the route. Suddenly, a lewd laugh came from behind. Hee hee, little beauty waiting here for Lord Liang? 15. Damn it. The persistent Liang Qiushi. The old, crippled eunuch, with his thinning hair and saga face, looked like a classic NPC straight out of a horror movie. I instinctively bolted. This body was young, so Liang Qiushi didn't catch up. But after I rounded 2 corners, I froze at the dead-end alley in front of me, inhaling sharply, unfamiliar with the terrain. Behind me, Liang Qiushi was closing in. He panted heavily, drool dripping from his mouth, his eyes gleaming with malice. You little bitch. Refusing Lord Liang? You're just like that slut Sungya.
Sungya?
Memories from before I transmigrated suddenly flooded my mind. So, Yuan'er being targeted by Liang Qiushi wasn't without reason. It was Sungya complaining about feeling unwell, tricking the young girl into going to the Imperial Garden to pick flowers, where Liang Qiushi noticed her. Had I not run into the noble consort that day, things might already have gone too far. Ritual and propriety can harm people, especially such a young girl like Yuan'er. If that old pervert Liang Qiushi had gotten his way, death would have been her only outcome. I ground my teeth. For the first time in my life, I wanted to kill someone. That damned old eunuch dared covet a pure girl? Sunggya wasn't innocent either. I guessed her stomachache was feigned, but I hadn't realized she was so malicious. Clearly, Liang Qiushi had set his sights on her, and she schemed to pass him off onto Yuan'er. Thinking about having shared a room with such a person these past days made my blood boil. Liang Qiushi approached slowly. I was about to roll up my sleeves and fight him when the tanuki cat in my arms suddenly darted out like lightning. Within 2 nimble passes, the old eunuch's scream pierced the air. Drops of blood splattered on the stone tiles. I was stunned. Liang Qiushi clutched his eyes, bent over, wailing horribly. Meanwhile, the tanuki cat calmly licked its paws. I quickly seized the opportunity, grabbed the cat, and ran like the wind. As I passed him, I lifted my leg high and swept it beneath him.
Ah!
His screams became even more pitiful. I pretended not to notice and dashed away. When I returned to Qingxi Palace, Luo Xiao was splashing water and looked surprised. So fast. I was panting from running, unable to speak, waving at her instead. Luo Xiao said, "Just in time. The noble consort was looking for you, asking you to see her immediately." I hesitated briefly, then entered. It was fine. I still had words to say to the noble consort.
16.
The noble consort leaned on the couch, shooting me a glare. "You're a busy one. Even I couldn't see you." I held the cat and smiled awkwardly. "I went to find a cat for your highness." "You asked for Sunggya. Why did you go?" "Well," I hesitated, then told her everything truthfully. The noble consort snorted. "So, it was such a trivial matter." I was about to speak when she lifted her hand lightly. "Zhou Dafu, go and kill that Liang Qiushi." I gaped. Zhou Dafu nodded once and withdrew. "Me, mistress?" My tongue felt tied in knots. Could it be that in a rigid feudal hierarchy, a single word from the noble consort could command a eunuch to die? And this was Liang Qiushi, a man of some standing. The noble consort snorted lightly. "I always protect those under me. That filthy creature has crossed my path time and again. I've long been disgusted by him. Moreover," her striking eyebrows flashed a killing intent. "He belongs to Xie." Xie was the empress's personal name. I understood. So this had become entangled in the private affairs of both noble ladies. My mind gradually went blank as the gentle, beautiful image of the empress appeared. Liang Qiushi was the empress's man? Looking at him, it didn't seem so. Given all this, the noble consort didn't bother with her hair, merely having me attend casually. The lion cat seemed to read faces, and upon seeing the noble consort, it even ignored me. Now, lying in her lap, it kneaded and purred. I was dumbfounded. This was a noble consort among cats indeed. The noble consort's face brightened as she coaxed the cat. She removed her head ornament, teasing the lion cat, speaking as if to herself. "You are a conscientious one. Then let's call you Qiuqiu." I watched in disbelief as the lion cat was officially named Qiuqiu. Could the empress's personal name really be Qiuqiu? I watched Qiuqiu leap about, obsequious and playful, amusing the noble consort. I couldn't help admiring it. Being a cat to this degree, it really earned its title. At that moment, Zhou Dafu returned. The noble consort's expression was calm. "Is it done?" "Yes, it's been handed to my brother Liufu. Your brother is skilled at interrogation. He must extract something from that old man." A chill ran down my spine. I felt an inexplicable fear, unsure what to say. Perhaps I had previously taken things in the palace too lightly. The women here were masters of palace intrigue. Not fighting might only mean disdain. After attending the noble consort, I exited the main hall and saw Luo Xiao splashing water again. A basin of water faded the bloodstains on the stone tiles considerably. She smiled at me. "So, did the noble consort like the cat you chose?" The mistress seems pleased. I looked at the faint traces of blood. Luo Xiao, what about Sungya? Oh, her.
She smiled, unchanged.
She made a grave mistake and has just been dragged out from here. I followed the long, straight path with my eyes. There shouldn't have been smoke in the Forbidden City, yet a faint mist rose like layers of silk, hiding the mud and crimson stains on the stone tiles. No one knew someone had been dragged away here. Luo Xiao said, the noble consort hates betrayal most of all. Sungya was dead. 17. The next day, the noble consort went out again. Life in the palace was dull. Aside from formal greetings, the rest of the time was spent on the amusements that the other concubines sought. This time, the virtuous noble consort had accidentally acquired several rare peonies and invited people to come admire them. The noble consort and the virtuous noble consort did not get along, but everyone else was attending. If she didn't go, it would make her look out of place. Before leaving, she tried on several outfits, making me look at her repeatedly, before finally dragging herself out of the palace. The noble consort said this was saving the best for last. Sure enough, when we arrived at the virtuous noble consort's Yuan'er palace, the courtyard was already filled with concubines in vibrant, colorful attire. They came not just to see the flowers, but also to see each other. Today, the noble consort wore a pearl headpiece. The pale pink South Sea pearls were large and perfectly round, this year's rare entry into the palace, owned by no one else. I couldn't help but think, no wonder concubines competed for favor, not just for the old, unattractive emperor, but for jewelry and treasures like this. As soon as she entered, envious gazes converged on her from all directions. She remained composed, slowly taking a seat, a faint smile on her lips. My sister seemed to be in high spirits today, dressing so beautifully. Concubine uncovered her face and laughed. We are plain and dull. How could we compare to your highness's peerless beauty? Their praise made me feel inadequate, which only made the noble consort more pleased with herself. Yet, according to palace intrigue drama rules, someone would soon come to crush her pride. Sure enough, the empress arrived gracefully. Her calm, poised gaze fell on the noble consort. Yuan'er, you've dressed neatly today. The noble consort usually had a calm demeanor and rarely lost her temper. Yet every time she encountered the empress, she flared up like a bristling cat, her eyes wide, looking even more vibrant.
What do you mean by that?
She snapped. The empress only smiled slightly and said nothing. The virtuous noble consort quickly interjected. Enough, noble Consort Zhang. Her Majesty is complimenting you. I was just fortunate to acquire a few rare flowers. Don't let wind and rain ruin them, the noble consort replied. The empress asked, the grand princess will be coming today as well, won't she? The virtuous noble consort nodded. A notice was sent to the Duke of Zhongguo's residence, though I'm unsure if the princess received it. At the mention of this, even the usually flamboyant noble consort toned down her attitude. She asked, is this the princess's first time entering the palace? The virtuous noble consort nodded.
Yes.
Previous notices were intercepted by the duke's household. The noble consort snorted. A mere fallen duke dares to manage matters of the imperial family? Everyone fell silent. Few could match the noble consort's prestige. Her family was influential, and her father held power in the borderlands. Most concubines could only remain quiet. Women in the palace had no freedom. Winning brought boundless glory, losing meant being crushed to pieces. The virtuous noble consort spoke, her voice slightly strained. The Cui family is prestigious, with many rules. The princess has not had it easy there. The noble consort sighed lightly. After all, she's motherless, pitiful, with no one to care for her. Her words revealed the truth. Everyone quietly turned their gaze toward the empress. It was well known the grand princess was born to the late empress and should rightfully consider her mother, aunt. Such a child should have been cared for by the empress. The empress lowered her gaze and did not answer, her delicate hand resting on a cup. Let's wait until the princess arrives. After a while, the light shifted. Hasty footsteps came from outside the door. A girl no more than 15 or 16 ran in. She resembled the empress slightly, with a pointed chin and almond-shaped eyes, but was not identical. The empress remained composed and elegant. But the girl, though noble in bearing, looked flustered and thin. Seeing the concubines, she froze outside the gate. Only when the empress called her, "Yuan'er," did she dart in like a fledgling swallow. "Mother!" She bit her lip, tears streaming. I stood behind the noble consort, observing this legendary, grand princess from the shadows. It was said the late empress was beautiful, but the grand princess was merely delicate and fair, a case of daughters resemble their fathers. I had seen His Majesty. Though he had an extraordinary aura, his features were ordinary. Fine for men, but not strikingly beautiful for women. The grand princess sobbed in the empress's arms. Even the noble consort's eyes flickered with complexity. "Mother Empress, Yuan'er thought I'd never see you again," the princess hiccuped. She had married into the Duke of Zhongguo's household at 14 and had never returned to the palace. How the empress managed to bring her forcibly back was unclear. The virtuous noble consort also looked displeased. "The duke's household is audacious, detaining the princess?" "And no," the princess sobbed, "I didn't want to come out myself. My sister-in-law from the Cui family is a refined noble, so I tried to behave with propriety. But the more I tried, the worse I did." Upon hearing this, the women nearby sighed. The virtuous noble consort said, "My little princess, you are of imperial blood, raised without worry. How could you be compared to the rigid rules of noble women? Even if compared, you would never match them in a lifetime." The noble consort added, "Your father has worked tirelessly against the aristocracy all his life, so you could grow up freely. Why restrict yourself?" The princess blushed, stammering, "My sister-in-law is the fairest in Qing'e." Everyone understood immediately. The princess was too young to understand that power was far more enticing than beauty. Children were few in the palace, so the few that existed were always spoiled. I noticed the noble consort's gaze fall on me. After a while she spoke. "Yuan'er, you will stay with the princess at her residence for a while." I froze, surprised by the noble consort's instruction. Of course, since the princess was distressed over her appearance, sending me was the most reliable choice. What astonished me was the noble consort's attitude. She appeared flamboyant and detached, as if observing palace affairs from afar, yet she paid such close attention to the grand princess. The empress's fleeting gaze also swept over my face. She seemed to be trying to remember me. "You are Yuan'er?" I bowed slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Her recalling gaze withdrew, and she said faintly, "You should not go alone. I will send someone with you." Naturally, I agreed. Sometimes palace life isn't just about jewels and titles, it's about navigating every glance, every slight, and every hidden rule. As we follow Yuan'er into the world outside the palace walls, let's see how even small acts can shift the delicate balance of power.